Hypnotic is directed by Robert Rodriguez and stars Ben Affleck, Alice Braga, William Fichtner, and among others. And in this story, it deals with Ben Affleck's character, who is a detective looking for his missing daughter that he believes got abducted. And he follows a case that, as you've seen from the trailer, has to do with William Fichtner that he's chasing. And he ends up coming across some strange events that take place where he believes that William Fichtner has something to do with his daughter being missing, and he also notices that there's people that are basically being like hypnotized in some way by William Fichtner's character, and there's just some strange events that go forward where he gets closer and closer to him, and pretty much he learns about this thing called Hypnotic, where pretty much reality can change. And in a way, it's basically the equivalent if you took the reality stones that Thanos used in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and turn it into that kind of thing where things aren't what they seem in certain aspects. But I'll leave it there because there's some other big beta twists and turns I can't reveal. But that's pretty much the gist of it. Now here's a little backstory. Now this movie was directed by Rodriguez, who I've actually really been a big fan of, growing up and seeing a lot of his movies, especially his cult classics, including Desperado, From Dusk Till Dawn, Once Upon a Time in Mexico that I really enjoyed, and then a lot of other films that I've really come to enjoy over the years, especially Sin City, and among others. And this was an unusual kind of movie going into it because this was something that came out of nowhere, where I didn't even know this movie existed until about a month ago when I saw the trailer for it and didn't realize that there was a new Robert Rodriguez movie coming out and with Ben Affleck of all people starring in it. And so it got me interested, but at the same time, it also did kind of make me wonder, like, what kind of, based on it did make me kind of wonder based off the premise, because the idea of basically having someone that can alter, pretty much hypnotize people's minds and stuff, I do like that kind of concept. And so, after upon seeing the film, I can honestly say that it was decent. It's got some really interesting stuff that really kept me going throughout. And there is some really cool. There is a couple cool twists and turns that I did feel really made the movie a lot better than what I thought it would be. But it does kind of suffer a lot from a lot of derivative stuff that you've seen in countless other films that probably use elements of this concept a whole lot better with. And also, it doesn't fare well with its being pretty short too. But to get my pros out of the way, I thought Ben Affleck was great in this. I thought him playing this kind of dedicated detective trying to find out where his daughter is and stuff. And in the first half of it, believe it or not, it kind of reminded me of elements of that game Heavy Rain to an extent, where that also deals with pretty much missing children and a little bit of prisoners in that regard. So I thought that was great. The other biggest standout for me the most is William Fichtner, because I thought there were times where his performance in this reminded me a lot of his performance in Drive Angry, on that kind of manipulative and really just kind of smart ass kind of remarks that he would make, or certain quips that he would make, or certain lines that he would say that maybe remind me of that character, but in a good way. And the way that he's kind of able to like hypnotize people and stuff, it is very reminiscent of that film, but not quite the extent of kind of like fun level like he had in that one. This one was like a more toned down version of that, but he was still great, and it was a blast to see him. And then the other one thing I got to really appreciate the most is the way that the movie deals more into this plot as we get to learn more about the hypnotic stuff. And there is some interesting world building that I'm a kind of a pro con with, because there's some really stuff that they really add on to that does have some cool twists and turns they emphasize with the whole hypnotic plot, with the whole hypnotic stuff that they go into detail with. But for the most part, I think for about the first half, it was really getting me to where it was going. And then the other thing too is you can tell this is a Robert Rodriguez movie, the way it's kind of shot in certain scenes, the way he's using his cinematography. And there's a couple of cast members here and there that you would see from other Rodriguez movies that really work. And, and there's also there's actually a funny in-joke that they actually throw in there that I thought was kind of funny, because it actually reminded me of a joke that he used from Desperado. So I think that was intentional. So that was great to hear that in the film. And then, the way that the movie kind of blows, and the music as well, I thought was really cool, especially, it gets you that kind of, edge of your seat kind of vibe that you would hear in these kind of detective type of thrillers. And so that was good. But this is now where I kind of get into my cons. And I will say that as much as I was getting into the plot, it's really about the second half where it feels like it gets into a lot of rushed material, where it does switch gears on you on a certain point. And while I do find this interesting how they do it, and I won't go into spoilers, but let's just say that there's twists that they do in the film that I think they did kind of feel like they kind of overstuffed it to where it was like Rodriguez was trying to do a Shyamalan, where he was kind of really trying to do twist after twist after twist. And while there's some stuff that works, it did feel like it was giving me flashbacks to Glass, where he basically went overboard and tried to do what Shyamalan did with Glass, where he tried to do too many twists, and he tried to throw everything that sticks to see what lands. And there's a couple things that do land, but for other things, there's a lot of stuff in this that I did question the rules of how they established the hypnotic in things. And on top of that, there's some other stuff that's not really fully explored because the movie only runs about 90 minutes. And that comes into play with certain characters that come in later. And in addition to stuff that we never really get explained before, and the way that the characters are very kind of paper thinly written. And so there's only so much you can do in 90 minutes, and that's what really holds the movie back the most, because had the movie would have been a little longer, maybe about 2 hours or so, maybe a little over 2 hours, I could have seen this really go into this kind of complex material that really worked. Because if you can take movies that do a complex storylines like this, like Memento or Inception, well, maybe not Inception, in Inception, or even some other stuff that really, add so much world building, you really need to have a longer runtime that works in that kind of level. And if you're going to make it a lot more, kind of grounded, so to speak, it has to make sense with how it evolves with the way the story plays out. Because when it gets to about the third act, it really felt like they were trying to cram so much plot in, and it becomes very messy to the point where you're really trying to latch on and all that, but it's like they really felt like it felt very rushed. So that's really my biggest flaw with this movie that holds me back a lot, because I was really on board with it the way it was going with the first half, but it's just the second half really goes into some stuff that is not really fully explored. And while I do appreciate the ending, and I did think it was a good ending that did save it, that second half, it really felt like it was really winding down to a point where it seemed like there was so much more material they could have established a whole lot better with. And so with that being said, I did think the movie was still a good time to watch. And, it's not one of Rodriguez's best, but it is a decent film. And if anything, I would say wait for streaming on this one, because this is one of those where if it would have came out like the early 2000s, I would have rented it at a Blockbuster as like a weekend rental, so to speak. And so with that being said, I'm going to give the movie a high average Joe on the Film Freaks meter. And so for those of you who have also seen Hypnotic, let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.